The day my son handed me a cardboard box and told me to pack my things, I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just looked at him, this man I'd held in my arms 31 years ago, and I thought, you have no idea what you just started. My name is Robert Callahan. I'm 62 years old, and for most of my adult life, I believed that everything I built for my family. The house in Columbus, the contracting business, the college fund I scraped together working 60-hour weeks while my wife Margaret battled cancer and still managed to pack Daniel's lunch every single morning. I believe that love like that, the kind that costs you something real, comes back to you eventually. I was wrong, or maybe I was just early. Daniel was our only child. After Margaret passed, it was just the two of us for nearly 4 years. He was 23, fresh out of Ohio State, and I watched him grow into someone I was genuinely proud of. He was sharp, funny, a little stubborn, reminded me of his mother. When he got a job at a marketing firm downtown and started talking about buying his first place, I helped him with the down payment. $45,000. Didn't ask for a single thing in return. That's not how family works, I told him. You help because you love. Then he met Vanessa. I want to be fair here because fairness matters to me. In the beginning, Vanessa seemed fine, polished, ambitious, the kind of woman who has an opinion about everything and isn't shy about sharing it. Daniel was crazy about her. They got engaged after 14 months, married the following spring, and I flew her parents in from Phoenix and paid for the rehearsal dinner without being asked. I thought that was the right thing to do. I thought it was a good start. What I didn't realize was that Vanessa had already started doing arithmetic. She was adding up what I had, what Daniel stood to inherit, and what she'd need to do to position herself at the center of it all. It started small, the way it always does. She started referring to my Sunday dinners as check-ins, like I was a parole officer stopping by. Then she started scheduling things on Sundays, brunches with her friends, day trips, home projects that conveniently needed Daniel's full attention. I went from seeing my son every week to seeing him once a month, then less. When I called, he was always just stepping into something. I started leaving voicemails he'd return 3 days later with a text. About a year into their marriage, they bought a bigger house in Worthington. Nice neighborhood, good schools, the whole plan laid out. I helped with that purchase too, not as much as the first time, but I covered the closing costs and bought them a new refrigerator and a washer set because the ones in the house were old. Vanessa said thank you exactly once, and it sounded like she was thanking a contractor. That Christmas, I drove over with gifts and a lasagna Margaret used to make every holiday. Daniel opened the door looking uncomfortable before I'd even stepped inside. Vanessa was in the kitchen. She came out, looked at the lasagna dish and said, "We're actually doing a clean eating thing right now, Robert. You should have called first." I'd been to that house 14 times. She had never once called me anything other than Robert. "I'm sorry," I said. "I can take it back if you'd rather." "No, it's fine, leave it." Daniel didn't say a word. That was the moment I first felt it. Not anger, something quieter and colder, a recognition. By the following year, the visits had rules I was never told directly but felt constantly. Don't come without texting first. Don't stay past 8. Don't bring up Margaret. Vanessa found it emotionally heavy. Don't offer parenting opinions about the baby they were expecting. Don't comment on how the house is decorated, how Daniel looked tired, how Vanessa seemed stressed. Just smile. Just be grateful you're allowed in the room. My grandson Eli was born in March. I was not called until 6 hours after the birth. Vanessa's parents had been there from the start. I found out later they'd been in the waiting room the whole time. No one thought to tell me. I held Eli for the first time when he was 2 days old, and I kept my face very still so I wouldn't show how much that hurt. Over the next year, I watched myself become an afterthought in my son's life. The birthday dinner they forgot to invite me to until the day before. The family photo on their holiday card, Vanessa, Daniel, Eli, and her parents, that I found out about when a neighbor mentioned seeing it on social media. The Thanksgiving where I arrived at noon as agreed and Vanessa opened the door and said, "Oh, we actually ate early. There's a plate in the fridge." I ate alone at their kitchen counter, while they watched football in the other room. Still, I said nothing. I am not a man who makes scenes. Margaret always said that was both my best and worst quality. I absorb, I observe, I wait. The end came on a Tuesday in February. Daniel called me, actually called, not texted, and asked if I could come by that evening. Something in his voice was off, rehearsed. I drove over and found them both sitting in the living room like they'd arranged the furniture for a meeting. Vanessa spoke first. "Robert, we've been talking, and we think it would be better for everyone if you took a step back from the family for a while." I looked at Daniel. He was studying the carpet. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means," she said, "that your presence has become a source of stress in our home. You drop by without enough notice. You undermine my parenting. You make comments. I brought Eli a birthday gift. You showed up 40 minutes early and interrupted his nap schedule." I turned to Daniel, "Son." He finally looked up. His jaw was tight. "Dad, it's just we need some space. We need to figure out our family dynamic without feeling like we're being watched." "I'm your father. I know that. I paid for this house." The room went very quiet. Vanessa's expression shifted into something I can only describe as satisfied, like I'd confirmed something she'd been waiting to prove. "And we appreciate that," she said, in a tone that made clear she did not. "But financial contributions don't entitle you to unlimited access to our family." Daniel handed me a cardboard box. Inside were a few things I'd left at their house over the years. A jacket, a phone charger, a photo of Margaret and me from 1987 that had been sitting on their bookshelf. "I think it's better if you take these," he said. I stood up. I picked up the box, and then I said the only thing I could think of that was true. "I hope you both understand what you're doing." I drove home. I sat in my kitchen for a long time. I didn't eat. I didn't watch television. I just sat with the box on the table in front of me and thought about my wife and what she would say, and what she would want me to do. Then I called my attorney. Here's what Daniel didn't know, because I'd never found a reason to tell him. I had restructured my estate 3 years earlier, after a health scare that turned out to be nothing but left me thinking seriously about what I wanted my legacy to look like. My attorney, a woman named Carol Byad who I'd worked with for over 15 years, had helped me set everything up cleanly. The business, the properties, including the original family home I still owned outright, and the financial accounts were all held in a trust. Daniel was a beneficiary, but beneficiaries don't control trusts. Trustees do. I was the trustee. There was one other thing Daniel didn't know. The house in Worthington, the one he thought he owned, the one where Vanessa had just handed me a cardboard box full of my dead wife's photograph, had a lien on it. Not a bank lien. A private lien held by me from when I'd covered a portion of the original purchase in the form of a personal loan rather than a gift. I'd never pressed it. I'd never mentioned it. It was just sitting there in the paperwork, quiet and patient, the way I am. Carol pulled up the documents the next morning and confirmed everything was exactly as I'd left it. I told her I wasn't looking to cause destruction. I just wanted things to be handled correctly. "Correctly is my specialty," she said. 2 weeks later, Daniel and Vanessa received a formal letter from Carol's office. It was polite, precise, and devastating. It outlined the lien, provided the full loan documentation, and noted that per the terms I was formally requesting repayment within 90 days, as was my legal right. It also included a notice that I would be reviewing the terms of the family trust, and that Daniel's distributions would be placed on a temporary administrative hold pending that review. I heard from Daniel within 4 hours. "Dad, what is this?" "It's correspondence from my attorney, Carol Byad. You have her number. You're putting a lien on our house." "The lien already existed, Daniel. I'm just making it visible. Silence. I don't understand why you're doing this. I set down the coffee cup I'd been holding and chose my words the way a man does when he's been waiting a long time to say them clearly. 3 weeks ago, your wife told me I was a source of stress. You handed me a box with your mother's photograph in it and asked me to leave. So I've decided to handle things in a businesslike manner, since that seems to be the relationship we have. More silence. Vanessa didn't, he stopped, started again. She didn't mean for it to go that far. What did she mean for it to go, Daniel? He didn't have an answer for that. The 90-day clock ticked. Daniel and Vanessa did not have the money to repay the lien outright. They'd extended themselves buying the house and had a new baby and 2 car payments. I knew this not because I'd been watching, but because I'm a 62-year-old man who's read a balance sheet before. They had to refinance, which in the current market meant a significantly higher rate, which meant their monthly payment went up by over $400. I did not enjoy this. I want to be honest about that. There was no pleasure in it. What I felt was something more like clarity. The satisfaction of a man who has spent his whole life absorbing and finally decided to stand up straight. The review of the trust took about 6 weeks. At the end of it, I didn't disinherit Daniel. I'm not that man. But I restructured the distribution so that nothing transfers automatically. Everything goes through Carol's office, with documentation and review, and a provision that gifts of goodwill, the kind a father gives a son without being asked, are not legally obligated to continue unless the relationship is one of demonstrated mutual respect. Carol said it was some of the tightest language she'd drafted in 20 years. I sent Daniel a copy with a handwritten note. It said, "I love you. I always will. But love is not the same as unlimited tolerance, and family is not the same as an entitlement. When you're ready to talk, I'm here." I didn't hear back for 6 weeks. Then one Saturday morning in May, there was a knock at my door. I opened it and found Daniel standing on my porch alone. No Vanessa. He looked like he hadn't been sleeping well. He was holding a paper bag and I could smell coffee through it. "I brought breakfast," he said. He looked at the ground. "Can I come in?" I held the door open. We sat at the kitchen table for 3 hours. He talked. I listened. He told me things I'd suspected and things that surprised me, how Vanessa had gradually convinced him that my closeness was a form of control, that my generosity came with strings, that I was undermining their independence. How he'd started to believe it because it was easier than fighting, because he loved her, because he was tired and new parent exhausted, and it was simpler to just agree. He cried twice. I handed him napkins. "She wasn't totally wrong," he said. "I know that. I let it go too far. I should have talked to you instead of the box." "Yes," I said, "you should have." "Dad, I'm sorry." I looked at my son, this man who has his mother's eyes and his father's stubbornness, and I thought about what Margaret would want from me right now. She would want me to be honest. She would also want me to choose love when there was a real choice to make. "I accept that," I told him. "But we have to do this differently. That means me too. I hear what you're saying about space and independence. I can work on that. But I am your father and Eli is my grandson and I am not a visitor in this family." He nodded. He kept nodding. "And Vanessa and I need to have a real conversation," I said. "Not a managed one, a real one." He said he'd make sure of it. That conversation happened 2 weeks later, over dinner at their house. It was uncomfortable and honest and long overdue. Vanessa is not a villain, I've come to understand. She's a woman who is deeply afraid of losing control of her life, and I'd represented a threat to that control that she didn't know how to handle except to eliminate. I'm not saying that excuses what she did. I'm saying I understand it now in a way I didn't before, and understanding is where repair has to start. We are not close. We may never be. But there are ground rules now, spoken ones, and that is worth more than the polite fiction we had before. I see Eli every other Sunday. I came over last week and he ran to the door before I'd even knocked, because apparently he hears my truck from the driveway now. I brought him a little wooden train set that used to be Daniel's, and we sat on the living room floor for an hour building track. Vanessa was in the kitchen,